This video is going to have a look at innate behaviour. You're going to have a look at what innate behaviour is and how scientists discovered it, and you're going to have a look at how it compares to behavioural imprinting. Innate behaviour then is something that is inherited. So when we talk about that, we mean something that you can naturally do or naturally feel without being trained for it to happen. So being scared of spiders is something that's innate. Now when I talk about startled, I mean something like a reflex. Now if you think back to year 10, a reflex is something that doesn't involve the brain. It's not trained, it just happens. So it's hardwired into our brains. There are a couple of examples then. The first one being the startle reflex in babies. So if you make a loud noise, it might make them cry, might make them move their arms around to try and protect themselves. The second one is dragonflies. Now this one is slightly more complicated, but it involves the same thing. A dragonfly baby crawls out of the water, which is called a dragonfly nymph, and on its own naturally sheds its skin, which it's never been trained to do before. It can then either go back or it can fly off, which again it hasn't done before. This is all controlled by the genes. There are two other examples, one of them earthworms, which show something called as negative photoaxis and move away from the light, and sea anemones wave their tentacles more when stimulated by chemicals emitted by their prey. Okay, the next thing we're going to have a look at is Tinbergen. He's an ethologist, someone that studies behaviour of animals, and he studied the innate behaviour in herring gulls. He was born in 1907 and died in 1988, and he carried out the study in 1940. So what he noticed was that newly hatched gull chicks knew how to automatically peck at the cheek of the mother herring gull to get the mother to open up and regurgitate food. He also noticed that the herring gulls had a red spot on their beak, and he researched to find out whether it was that red spot that the babies went to. And as you can see from this graph, it was the red and black most of all, so if they had that spot, they would actually peck more often. This next section of the video then is going to have a look at behavioural imprinting. We're going to have a look at Konrad Lorenz, who was an ethologist from 1930 that did some research into geese. Now he noticed that ducklings and young geese recognised their mother straight away and followed her around, and he wanted to figure out whether this was innate or something different. So what he did was he took two sets of goose eggs, and one of them was hatched by the mother, group 1, and group 2 was hatched in an incubator with no mother. Now he made sure that the first moving object that the goose chicks saw, group 1 was the mother and group 2 was Lorenz himself. And the goose chicks in group 2, the ones from the incubator, treated Lorenz the same as group 1 did their mother. They followed him around. Now this is something called behavioural imprinting, something that they learn straight away. It's not innate. So it happens early on and it can last into adulthood. The final section then is going to have a look at choice chambers. Now a choice chamber is a petri dish which has been split into 4 sections. One section is dark and wet, one section is dark and dry, one section is light and dry, and one section is light and wet. So scientists will then put about 12 woodlice in the centre of this container and put the lid on. After 10 minutes, they'd noticed that most of them had gone to the dark and wet area. This shows that woodlice prefer damp and dark conditions, which are the conditions closest to the habitat they live in and are adapted to.